Hello everybody, this is Russ Bucher from ControlMyJoystick, and in this video we're going to take a look at how we can configure ControlMyJoystick with Civilization 5. Now, Civilization 5 is a game that's kind of a map scrolling game. You get to scroll around, see the different units, plot your strategy, take over the world, that kind of thing. And now Civilization 5 is kind of odd. It's a great game, but you can't reconfigure the controls within the user interface of the game. You actually have to go and hack some keyboard configuration XML files. And to find the keyboard shortcuts, there's lists available online for Civilization 5. And what we're going to do is configure ControlMyJoystick to allow us to scroll around in the game using the 3D Connection Space Mouse Pro, which I have one right here. And we'll also set up some keys on the controller that will control various functions in the game, and it will also set up some voice commands too. So let's see how it's done. So first of all, this is ControlMyJoystick, and I have it set to the Civilization 5 profile, which I've recently created. And here you can see I have some macros, and I'm just going to go here to the 3DX where, widen this a little bit. And you'll see here that I have the digital joystick enabled. And what that allows us to do, and I'm just going to move ControlMyJoystick out of the way, is, normally in this game you have to use the keyboard arrow keys to move around, which is a little uncomfortable if you want to use your mouse in your right hand. You have to reach all the way over to the right hand side to use these or move your keyboard around. It's a bit of a pain. So instead, we've set it up now so that we can actually just use the controller to scroll around in the game. And it's much more comfortable because you can just rest your hand on the hand rest here, and then you could still use your mouse. You could use these buttons and also use voice commands. So let's see what I have set up here. First of all, let's take a look at how we set it up for scrolling. Now, if I look here in under 3DX where you could see I have the different axes, and this is rotational x-axis, which goes kind of this way. Rotational y-axis goes this way. So if I were to move the controller to the right or to the left to kind of rotate it right or left, it's going to be rotating around the y-axis. So if I go like this, you can see that the indicator here goes to positive. If I release it, it goes back to 0. And if I go to the left, it goes negative. So to the right, to the left. And you can actually see it's scrolling here up and down this grid. That's because we're actually sending arrow up and arrow down keys or different arrow keys to the grid because we want these keys to go to the game. But because ControlMyJoystick is the active application right now, it's because the game's in the background, this is in the foreground, it's getting everything, including these keys that I've configured. So let's see how we configure it. So here I have the digital joystick with a dead zone of 50 set up, and anytime rotation around the y-axis goes negative, it'll send an arrow left key to the game, and it'll keep on repeating that until I return it back to 0. Okay, so if I go to the right, it'll send an arrow right. Now to configure that, we just double click, and it brings up the axis curve editor. And here I have a very basic curve. Now, when you use a digital joystick function, it doesn't actually use this curve. That's more for an analog joystick emulation. So you could reset it to here. It doesn't make a difference. But what's important is we have a dead zone. So you can either type in the dead zone here, or you can go here and select one of the preset curves, which puts a dead zone in for you. Okay, so we don't use this curve part. But click on digital, and we can see here we've enabled the digital, and I've selected the key. So you can pick any of these keys, and according to the keyboard keystroke shortcut documentation for this game, I need to use an arrow left and an arrow right. Okay, so if I go to down delay, this means that whenever I move the controller and it sends one of these keys, arrow left or arrow right, it is going to hold that one of these buttons down and hold it for down for 20 milliseconds and then release it. Now, most games, 20 milliseconds by default is pretty good, but you may have to experiment with this value a little bit for your games. Civilization 5, these values should work. Other games, maybe not. Interkey delay means that this is the delay in between consecutive sending of these keys to the game. So in this case, we're going to go, if we had arrow left being sent, you'll go arrow left, down, wait 20 milliseconds, arrow left up, wait 0 seconds, and then start it all over again. So these should be good enough settings. And you can see for rotation around the x-axis, if I push up on the controller, you can see how the value goes negative, and if I go this way, it goes positive. So rotation X. I also have a curve, dead zone to 50. And, if you don't have a dead zone, you barely have to move the controller. You're going to start scrolling, and it's a little bit too sensitive. So it's a good idea to have a dead zone of some kind. Okay, so arrow up, arrow down. Okay, so let's give this a try. Now watch what happens here if I just move around the controller, because ControlMyJoystick is currently the active application. It's going to send all these keystrokes to ControlMyJoystick. We don't want that. We want to click on the game first, and now it is the active application, even though ControlMyJoystick is still stuck on top, and I have it on top because I've told it to stay on top. But here, now I can use the controller to allow us to scroll around. And you can just minimize ControlMyJoystick when you're gaming. I'll bring it back up here. Now, but it's a good idea when you're configuring a game is to try and set the game in windowed mode here. And I have here Civilization in windowed mode because that allows you to, swap in between these very simply. If you're in full screen mode, then this ControlMyJoystick won't be able to sit on top of it because DirectX takes control of the entire screen or the monitor. So, but once you have it configured, you can just minimize ControlMyJoystick, leave it running while you're gaming, and then go back and set your game up to full screen if you like. Okay, so we have the scrolling working. So let's see what other commands we have here. Now in the game, there's oftentimes you don't want to do anything with a unit. For example, here I have a tank and it's waiting orders, and I don't really want to give this one orders right now. So normally you'd skip, and to do that you'd press the space key on the keyboard. And so I'm just going to press space and click on the game first. Press the space key and it just jumps around to the different units that you have. Currently it's now my battleship. But I've also set up a macro on my controller to do the same thing. And if we go here, it's called do nothing, and I have a trigger of multi-fit. So there's a fit button here on the controller, and it's just handy because it's, I can hit it with my thumb while I'm moving the controller if I need to. So I have it set that whenever ControlMyJoystick detects this button being pressed, it'll find whatever macro has it as a trigger, which happens to be do nothing, and then it's going to run this script. And it's going to send a space key. Now it's tough to see, but there's actually a space key set up here because that is the command that you need to do nothing. Okay, so if I'm just going to put this down here a little bit, click on the game, and now I'm going to press this button, and you should see it jump to the next unit. Next unit. Okay. So let's see what else we have here. Now, I also have some functions here to toggle a hex grid on and off, and that's the same thing, except here I'm using the number 4 button, which is right here. So if I press that, it turns the grid on in game, which can make it a little bit easier to figure out how to move your character around this. The game can look really cluttered after a while once you get a whole bunch of units on there. So let's see what else we have here. Now I also have this one here for strategic view toggle, and so if I press the 3 button on the controller, it would toggle the view. So let's see what else we've got. Economic overview, and this is a voice command. So I have configured my voice commands, selected my microphone, and I also have a prefix of computer, and this helps the computer understand your command a little bit if you say a certain word before your actual phrase. So I'm going to be saying computer, then this, and then it's going to run this macro and send the F2 button to the game. So let's give it a try. First of all, I'm just going to use the keyboard F2 and we'll see what it looks like. F2. Okay, brings up that screen. Press it again to toggle it. F2 toggle. Okay. So this time I'm going to say economic overview. Computer economic overview. I want to turn it off. Computer economic overview. So just toggling on those screens on and off, sometimes you want to see those screens very quickly. Maybe voice command isn't good for that one. You could use just a button here on the controller. In fact, you could set it up that you toggle it on when it detects that the button goes down, and there is a trigger for that. It's single button down, and then you could send the command again when it notices that the button has gone up. So it's like you have to hold the button down and it keeps the screen up, and you're going to release the button, closes that screen. Let's try another. And we have home city here, so this should take me back to my hometown. I'll just click here and give it a try. This is the home key on the keyboard. Makes sense. So click on the game, computer home city. And it takes me back to Berlin, my home. Well, in the game anyways. All right. So that's how you set it up. So, from Civilization 5, odd that, you can't really change the configuration in-game for your hotkeys, but you can get around that. If you get a list of the hotkeys, then, with ControlMyJoystick, you can allow it to scroll around, use these different buttons and voice commands to help control the game. So that's it. That's how you set up ControlMyJoystick with Civilization 5.